Okay, so let's get right into this. What is the retirement trust fund? It's this giant, mega digital vault where people pay lots of FICA taxes into it. And it's not really set up to be like a bunch of little accounts. It's not like that. What it is a giant account that receives those funds when it's more than what's normally needed. And we store money in it to use to basically pay future retired people, right? So we've got this like the money coming in, then we've got this trust fund where we put the extra. And the extra is what we take from to give everybody their 100% of the benefit that they're supposed to receive. Now, we know that in about 9 years, right around 9 years, that this trust fund is going to empty. And all we're going to be left with is what's paid in the immediate sense. And then, a year later, poof, what we have to pay out. And so when this happens, people are going to be getting around 75% of what they normally would be getting of their 100% check. But put another way, what you're getting right now, around 9 to 10 years from now, will be the same amount. That's how it will drop. It'll drop down to what you're getting right now in 9 to 10 years. So now I want to go through some of the basics of this so you understand what will happen when this actually occurs. Because the weird thing is a lot of people aren't really talking about it in the news. Now, I'm not trying to, and I'm not going to go into politics, but with the prior president, everybody would sound the alarm on everything. And with the current president, there's not many ringing, blaring sirens and blinking lights. There's just not much of it. So the thing is, when everybody was telling me that this was going to get fixed or worked on during this presidency, I think what's interesting is that it's almost gotten put more under the carpet than it was during the prior presidency. I want to go into essentially what the result of that is, not how it is. You can come up with your own conclusions as to why that is, but I want to go into how it will directly on the ground affect those who are retired when they have this benefit change. Okay, so please remember to like and subscribe if you like this channel, if it gives you information that you did not have before. Let's get right into it. So to be clear, this means around a 25% drop in funds to those over 62 and up who have taken retirement basically in the next 9 to 10 years from now. The National Institute on Retirement Security found in 2020, and I use 2020 statistics because it's kind of pre-COVID. I wanted to make sure we had at least like a thing. 2019 COVID started, 2020 was like COVID was getting rolling, but it wasn't really pushing one way or the other. So I wanted to use the 2020 stats. Only 7% of retirees have ideal situation of income from three sources: Social Security, a pension, and a savings, right? None of my generation has a savings. None of my generation has a pension, and they're very likely for those under 40 to cut back Social Security benefits. So my generation totally fluffs the whole way through. Now, the Social Security, they kept more than 7.5 million households out of poverty, which is a really big number. 7.5 million households out of poverty. They reduced public assistance costs by about $10 billion in 2013 alone. Now, pensions kept nearly 1 million retirees out of poverty, reduced public assistance costs by $4 billion in that 2013, which is really cool because the pensions did a lot of work themselves as well. So Social Security benefits did more work to keep people out of poverty. Pensions did a heck of a lot of work as well, just not as much, okay? A little bit less than half. A new report also finds, and this is from that National Retirement Security, which we call National Institute on Retirement Security. A new report also finds that a large portion, 40% of older Americans rely on Social Security income in retirement. So just to keep that simple, 40% of those who are retired rely on Social Security income, that retirement that they've received. Like that's their nut. That's the thing that they hold on to. That's the thing that keeps them from being homeless. Social Security alone is not considered sufficient for a secure retirement. They always argue that. And it was not intended to stand alone. They always argue that. Yet why are SSDI claimants, as Shadow's trying to dig a hole through the rug, then why are SSDI claimants only receiving a smaller amount, and yet they're expected to live on even less than a retired person? So that whole argument doesn't really hold up. Typically, benefits from Social Security replace approximately 40% of pre-retirement income. Most financial planners recommend at least a 70% income replacement rate for retirees, while others say this should be even higher given longer lifespans and rising health costs. In fact, the analysis indicates that if Social Security income had been 10% greater in 2013, there would have been about 500,000 fewer older households in poverty. So, basically what we're talking about are old people in a state of poverty, right? Retirement benefits keep people who are old, the gray generation at this point, from being impoverished. Okay. What is the major thing or the major things that can occur that will happen once the trust funds are reduced? So 9, 10 years from now, they're only getting about 75% of the check that they would normally get. First thing on the list I want to talk about are divorces. This was reported by Sachs and Sachs. Okay, here are some divorce facts that you should know about, and these are current ones. But it's going to get even worse once the retirement trust fund fails. More than 1 in 3 people who divorce in the United States are older than 50. 1 in 3 are older than 50. People 55 years and older currently account for 25% of all divorces, right? It's your 1 in 4, with 1 in 10 being 65 or older. Okay, so a lot of people don't realize there's a significant amount of people who are older that are already getting divorced. Women ages 63 and above who are divorced have a poverty rate of 27%, which is higher than any other group of that age, including widows. This rate is 9 times higher than the poverty rate for couples who remain married. For gray divorced men, right, we're talking about older men, the poverty rate was 11.4%. Older men often experience a 21% decrease in their standard of living following a divorce. So what you're going to see is a lot of people fighting over finances. They'll get a divorce, they'll be in an even worse spot. Not a good situation. The differentiating factors for this from earlier studies showed little to no impact on younger men's incomes. Now, the divorce rate had increased significantly for middle-aged adults aged 15 older since the 1990s. According to a report by the U.S. Census Bureau, and I'm reading from this group's notations, 39% of adults aged 65 to 74 years old, and nearly a quarter of those aged 74 and older have experienced divorces. I want to read that to you again because we're really talking about the retired individuals right here. U.S. Census Bureau said 39% of adults aged 65 to 74 years old, and nearly a quarter of those aged 74 and older have experienced divorce. Now, what's interesting is people who are older than me always tell me, hey, your generation is getting divorced left and right. God, look at you guys. You can't figure it out. It's over 50%, blah, blah, blah. Well, to be fair, those in their 60s, those in their 70s, I mean, to be fair, you guys got divorced a heck of a lot. I mean, sure, it's less, but damn, you know what I mean? I always love it. People are older, they're like, I'm a saint. I would never, my generation was amazing. Oh, geez, and all this bullshit. It is what it is. Let's just call it, it's bull, right? It's total bull. And then, 39% of adults age 65 to 74 years old, and nearly a quarter of those age 74 and older, okay, have experienced divorce. Look, granted, that's better than my generation, but not that much. Not that, I know everybody likes to say that they're like, a great generation. Statistics aren't so good. All right, individuals between the ages of 55 to 64 had the highest divorce rates, reaching approximately 43%, regardless of gender. So good job, 55 to 64 people. You probably let alcohol make your choices there about getting into relationships and getting out of relationships. We know how that happens. We know how that works. Because remember, that was a generation that still utilized, bars and things like that. Although my generation, who can afford to go to a bar and spend $6 for a beer, $8 for a beer, right? You got to pay for ice at some of these places. It's just not going to happen anymore. Around 20% of women aged 65 or older who are divorced have lower financial security compared to married women and live in poverty. According to a study conducted in 2020, individuals who experienced a gray divorce, regardless of gender, experienced a significant and immediate decrease in their wealth by 50%, right? Because, it's cut it in half. Okay. According to statistics, women initiate over 60% of gray divorces. So what we're talking about is 40% of men, 60% of women actually create these gray divorce situations. The women aren't happy. I think that's interesting. Howdy, old school truck driver. Howdy, howdy. Very cool to see you there. Next one. So here's the deal. Poverty is the next one that I want to go into. Homelessness, number one factors will be if they are already renting, getting a divorce, having poor life choices like drugs or alcohol abuse, and poor investment choices that lead to debt. When we talk about debt, credit card, debt is going to skyrocket. Home loans are going to skyrocket. Reverse mortgages all over the place. Car loans, you name it. Those individuals who are with gray hair are going to be taking out all these different types of loans. It's going to be very negative for them. And here's the worst part of all of it. The banks won't usually loan extra money to gray wallets, meaning that they will be pushed to very shady loans. So here's the deal. If an older person tries to get PayPal credit or some other credit line or more credit cards, more this or more, but the credit cards are usually, they'll give the older generation. But if they try to get certain types of other, access to credit, those different credit agencies, they don't want to deal with people who are retired because they've restricted income. So you'll be seeing a lot of shady, credit agency banks, basically giving loans where normally they wouldn't do it because they're going to try and get all those retired people snookered into things that they can't afford to pay off. I think the other thing too that we need to talk about with this is that when these older individuals have, it's the ownership versus the rental categories, right? Did they own a home or do they rent where they live, right? Remember how the more modern living side individuals, which is my polite way of saying more people on the very, 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 very far left, would say renting is better than home ownership, which we all know is 100% wrong. It's 100% wrong. Like disabled people that are like, I rather rent or own. They almost always would de facto say, I would love to own, where I live. You still get a few that will say, oh, I just like renting, and that's fine. That's fine. But the grand majority know financially. The smart individuals, when it comes to, accounting metrics of growth of their own financial success, they will own a house, right? Because then you have an asset. You can rent that asset. The asset is growing in worth. It's obviously a better deal. Yes, you have to upkeep it, do repairs on it, etc. But it is almost always, no matter what, a better thing to do than renting. Okay. So now, if you're older and you're renting, and you suddenly have no nest egg to sell once your retirement benefits, get too low to be able to do your monthly survival, then you're stuck. That's it. You're stuck, right? You don't have like a house to sell. You're stuck. The brighter gray wallets will rent out their home and use the money to pay for an apartment. Like that's what the people will do if they own a home. But again, when you don't own a home, you just lose in so many ways. And you're going to be seeing a lot of those individuals who are already poor. And here's the bad part. When they're already poor, it just multiplies and multiplies the effect on them of not having enough. And that's the really bad part of this, is that the poor will be even more poor, and it will just be multiplied in effect where they don't own a home, they're renting. The rent keeps rising at a ridiculous rate because the insurance costs keep rising at a ridiculous rate. They can't afford to live there anymore. Where are they going to go? Now they're getting 75% of 100% of their retirement. You can see where it gets bad. Now, here's another thing that will happen that is a more big effect of this whole thing coming down the line. Ultimately, the largest wealth transfer will be between the boomers and the millennials, right? Boomers pass away, millennials inherit. Boom to boom, right? But here's the kicker. When this happens, when they do this whole reduction of retirement benefits, many of those retired individuals will have to sell their home, right? Or they'll have to figure out some other thing to do. But they'll start selling off assets. And when they do that, the next generation, those millennials that were supposed to inherit from the boomers, won't be able to access all that basically generational wealth that was built up by the prior generation, their parents, to them. So what will happen is essentially when these elderly gray individuals will go ahead and sell off their stuff, corporations will buy it, and then they'll create more and more and more houses owned by corporations, as opposed to more and more houses owned by families or professionals or employees or, whatever, workers in general. And so what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of corporations swooping in and buying up all of these properties and houses and then renting them back out to the millennials that should have inherited them. So you'll see that whole you'll own nothing and you'll rent stuff and supposedly you'll be happy kind of gig. Now, why is all of this really relevant and important? They always argue right at the highest levels on the Hill, DC, that something magical is going to happen. But every year that we wait, the percentage increases of what's needed to actually fix the problem. And to be fair, it's literally billions of dollars every single year is what it goes up to actually fix the problem. So it's just every year it gets more and more costly. So when you have individuals who are saying, these people are going to take away your benefits, and these people are saying, I'm not going to touch them, I'm not going to touch them. And then these people are saying, well, they're going to take them away and we're not going to do anything. We're going to keep them the same. We're just going to keep paying them. What the problem is that if both groups do nothing, you lose. And so the closer they get to you not having your full check, the more they can manipulate what they ultimately give you, because the emergency level keeps increasing until you just have to accept what they figure out as the plan to save the whole thing. Which means, let's just be very fair about this, they're not going to be able to get away with taxing the rich by raising the FICA, ceiling all the way up so that, everybody has to pay FICA taxes on all income. They're never going to get away with that. What they're going to do is make it so that my generation, right, those who are basically 40 years and under, don't get to go ahead and get normal retirement benefits like prior generations, which then brings up the whole moral problem of, what do we do? Do we backstab the younger generations that are paying for the current generations, or do we try and find a solution for everybody? And I know that in that moment, the retired and those about to become retired will, et tu brute, stab all the millennials, all the Gen Zers in the back, because they just want to get their check. And so you're going to see one of the greatest betrayals in the history of America over the civil rights of the young doing the same payments as the old. There's another problem too. And this is the final thing I'm going to raise before I go to the next video. The other thing that really no one is talking about is that the projections that the SSA has for how well, this Social Security Trust Fund is going to do over a time period, they're wrong. I don't have math to back it up. I have to create, basically charts based off of what the SSA has released. But I can tell you the main reasons their projection as to how long the trust funds are going to last, even though they keep making it shorter and shorter and shorter, it's wrong, because with this massive inflation and, basically lots of corporations shutting down, massive layoffs, what's happening is there's a market correction. And the market correction is saying America is no longer a strong, super productive nation like it used to be pre-COVID. And as a result of that, a lot of the, we'll just call it, you can call it whatever you want, but the fat is getting cut from these corporations. And some of these corporations are the fat that's just going bankrupt. So what's happening is you have all these younger individuals, right, in their 30s, 40s, whatever, that are getting terminated, let go, being fired. And then all those people, that massive amount of employees, isn't paying the FICA tax in for the Social Security program. Now you might say, well, hey man, it's just a pre-COVID thing. It might last 2 or 3 years. They'll just keep firing people for 2 to 3 years. Like, this will be the first year that they do mass. Well, technically last year was the first year of mass layoffs. This will be the next year of mass layoffs. And maybe there will be one more year of mass layoffs. But my question to you is, how fast will things recover? Because remember, the recovery was financially backed by the federal government to, pay for payroll, do this, do that. And now that that's ended, right? Now that all those credits and, extra, financial benefits from the federal government, now that that's over, what happens is all these corporations, they're looking at their books going, well, we got to do a skeleton crew. We got to get skinny real fast, right? So they'll start, firing employees left and right, get them all off the books, right? And so what you have to keep in mind with this whole situation is that, unfortunately, this is going to very negatively affect how many people are paying in. And remember, these, for the most part, are not, $13 an hour jobs, right? They're not the minimum wagey kind of jobs. These are like, people making $60 to $80 to $90 to $150,000 at these different companies. So it's going to, in a major way, affect when the next president comes in, trying to fix the economy, doing whatever's going to happen, whether it's President Biden again, or, potentially, which the only other option is President Trump. I mean, Nikki Haley, maybe you think it's going to be Trump versus Biden. That's just what's going to line up. So my point to you with this whole thing is understand right off the bat the trajectory that we're getting from, Steve Goss from the SSA as the chief actuary, I don't think is correct. And I want to point out another thing too. A lot of the people who are Gen Zers, younger than me, the people in their 20s and early 30s, a lot of those people are not their trajectory for having jobs based off of their education is not good. So what do I mean? When you guys were basically going your education path, there was usually some sort of job, in the direction of essentially, getting right that type of job for that type of education, in an industry that matched up with it. And then my generation had a tough time with that. Like you might be able to get a legal job, but it won't be in the industry you studied for. Right. Well, if you were in personal injury, you're getting maritime law. If you were in, whatever, wills, trusts, and estates, you're getting criminal law, right? You're getting shuffled. Now, the next generation down, the Gen Zers, there's, for example, my industry, there's too many attorneys. There's too many attorneys now. And so they're having a tough time just trying to get any job. And so what's happening is, this is happening across the board. There's too many people that have the education for a particular type of job and a particular type of industry, and they can't find a position because the companies are shrinking due to poor economic management. And then those coming up looking for those jobs can't find any in those industries. So we're having a lot of young Gen Zers basically in a situation where they can't afford food and they can't afford rent. And so the problem is, even these full-time individuals that are now working and doing stuff, they're in this weird, terrible situation where the economy is collapsing on top of them. And remember, the future retired and current retired heavily rely on the future of millennials and Gen Zers, right? The people older than the millennials are the Gen Xers. The Gen Xers are carrying a lot of that weight to pay for the retired as it is right now. But as those Gen Xers transition into becoming retired people, it's going to be millennials and Gen Zers. And millennials and Gen Zers, the JV team, if you will, moving into the varsity positions are not going to have varsity level jobs. The money that they're going to make at these corporations is not going to be at the same level as those that came before them. They're going to have fewer executives and they're going to have lower paying jobs. And people are going to fight for those like never before. So my point to you with this whole structured model is that at the end of the day, I think the reality is that they don't have a proper projection on where this thing is going because they don't really understand what's going on with millennials and what's going on with these Gen Zers. Now, you could go ahead and fix a lot of this by taking away these student loans that are just strangling them. Now, a lot of people who are older would say, why would you do that? I had to pay my loans. And I get it. I understand where you're coming from. You didn't have to pay student loans anywhere near the massive, massive amount that we do. Because, you guys allowed the voting to allow them to charge that much. You poisoned us. But at the same time, right, if you did forgive more of those loans or heck, all of them, you would essentially be saving the potential of your retirement because those individuals would be able to, frankly, go and do more with money. They'd have more money to be able to, open new businesses, fight for better jobs, create more jobs, etc. But right now, as it stands, you're not going to see innovators. The millennials, the Gen Zers, you're not going to see innovators because they can't afford it. All their money is going into the housing, food, student loans, right across there. So I just hope you understand, that basically at the end of the day, considering that millennials and Gen Zers don't really have pensions, considering that their 401k, I don't even have a 401k, that they're super limited, considering that, key-off accounts and Roths and my generation doesn't really have access to those. So when I read to you these statistics for the retired back in the day, the pensions saved, $4 billion in retired people having to seek public assistance costs in 2013, when I read to you these statistics, you kind of have to understand that like my generation's not going to have any of that stuff. Neither is Gen Z. So, and then as a result of that, to be fair, and a lot of people don't realize this, but the success of your retirement is on the shoulders of the millennials and the Gen Zers. Those are going to be your two main kicking point individuals. Those are going to be the people who have to earn as much as they can. Now, I heard an argument made to me by a gentleman who basically who's on the left and works with individuals that are literally politicians on the left, that they need more immigrants and more immigrants and more immigrants. And they're not wrong. They're not wrong. We do need more immigrants because we as generational pool aren't making enough kids. But the problem is the incubation period for immigrants to become tax-paying earners is going to, for the most part, with all the massive millions that have been brought into the country, it's going to take them that amount of time just to get ramped up. And then at that point, it's not going to matter because they're still going to have to reduce retirement benefits by 25%, unless they find a way to magically do something different, like invest the funds into traditional trust fund or traditional Wall Street style investments, which make massively more on return. So anyways, guys, I will catch you at the next video. The next video specifically are about 5 things the disabled get wrong about the SSA, which I think it's a really cool kind of, history lesson and also modern things that they get wrong. And then tomorrow we're going to be doing videos using this for the first time, which is where I go through essentially how to give great testimony about pain medication. I've never had a claimant get it right without a lot of training. So I'm going to give you guys kind of like the walkthrough as to how it works so that you can try it yourself. I will catch you at the next video. Give me about 10 minutes and then we should be good to go. I'll see you soon. Give me about 10 minutes and we should be good to go from there. Please remember to click that like button, subscribe, click the all button, and please say howdy to our members or the ones in green. They help support the channel. And then also, if you want to go to Google, type in Disability Resolution Florida and go ahead and leave a review there if you like. And I'll catch you in about 10 minutes. Thanks so much, everybody. All right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.